Hi friends, it's Mandee. Hey, a little bit different format this week. We're actually going to do a quick replay of the Unknown Morning Show. You know, it's that time of year where the holidays are upon us, and so are other things like allergens in the air and the crud going around. So we needed to take a week off, but we wanted to give you some great content. So this is an episode that originally aired August 30th, and it's a fun episode. It's just Chuck and myself, and we're talking mobile DJ stories. Okay, here we go.
Test.
Roll music?
Let's roll it.
Welcome to the Unknown Morning Show.
It's the show where we explore radio,
Podcasting,
TV,
gear,
gearheads,
and making money with a hot mic and other stuff too.
This is the Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley. You know, we've talked about radio, and that's our whole, really, our whole thrust is broadcasting, right, Mandee?
Yeah, it's kind of a main theme that runs through.
Sure, Unknown Morning Show. But the other thing is, anything you can make money with having a mic. And part of that is, you know, a lot of us and a lot of our brothers and sisters have done it, and that would be the mobile DJ gig.
Yeah, you have much more experience at this. I kind of dallied with it early on because, you know, you need an extra source of income, folks, if you're going to be on the radio. Sure. Especially in a smaller market like where we are. I don't know if that exists in major markets. It might not so much. But here, you know, if you want to have a nice lifestyle, you need a little extra coming in. And so I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't, you know, probably worked with you and had the resources that you shared with me.
If I can paraphrase our late friend Tom Perriman, in the early iteration of KKUS, it didn't do well because, you know, things changed and sometimes the listeners don't come with it. It went from top 40 country to classic country. Mm-hmm. And so by the time they let me go, I was like, what took you so long? Because it wasn't making any money. So it's like a year later, Tom calls me and he says, hey.
You were talking about back in the days of US 104.
Yeah. So this is like 2001, late 2001. Mm-hmm. He says, hey, boy, you want to come back? And I said, yes. Do afternoons. And he goes, well, ask for all the money you can because those bastards aren't going to give it to you.
This is funny. I had a very
similar
conversation with a friend, unfortunately, like this week, about she's looking at maybe switching jobs. And I was like, I got to tell you, the one thing I've learned over the years is if you don't ask for it up front, you probably ain't getting it later. It doesn't matter how much harder you work. So aim high, sister. And female, I told her, I was like, you got to negotiate, babe. Like, you got to aim high and you got to negotiate with those boys because they will take you for as little as they can get you.
And, you know, mobile DJ, too. I don't know if you had this experience, but I did. I mean, it took me a couple of years to build, which was save for the equipment, getting my music in play. But the one thing that, and it was just school of hard knocks, which is, you know, building some sort of clientele.
Yeah, I never really was able to do it because I didn't try as hard as you did. Like I didn't work it as much. I didn't really market myself. I was very, very fortunate. Okay, I have to just say this, super grateful that I had you and I had Paula Prince and I had a fair amount of other people in our network that had been doing this for years. And so oftentimes what would happen is you would get a gig and then somebody else would call. Yeah. And you weren't able to do both gigs at the same time. And so they'd be like, hey, call my friend Mandee. She's just starting out, you know, and probably one of my favorite gigs, and we can talk about it later, was one of those situations.
Yeah. And I had that my first 2 years. I had 18 jobs my first 2 years because I was getting established. And the other thing I was finding out, though, and I found this out recently, generally this marketplace has stayed the same for like 40 years as far as what the per hour rate, which has surprised me. But the other thing that I did find out and that I would really exercise is, you know, like if, you know, we're in Tyler and I had a Tyler gig, it would be, you know, okay, this is going to cost you 3 hours, $300. Mm-hmm. And then Longview is going to cost you more. And I would call it degree of difficulty. Yeah. You know, but.
Well, and your travel and your time.
Yes. Yeah. I had a job, though, one time, in actually 2 jobs in Jefferson, but one of them was at the library. Did you ever do the library there?
Oh, no. I never had a gig in. Did I ever do a gig? I don't think I ever did a gig in Jefferson. I've been to Jefferson, but I don't think I ever did a gig there.
Well, the whole travel experience is probably 2.5 hours just to get there. But the other thing would be the library. While scenic and beautiful and everything, to get to where you're actually where you would have a wedding or dance or anything is the third floor and 7 flights of stairs. And I didn't know this, and when I was
And no
I didn't ask.
elevator?
I didn't ask. So when I got there, so the second time I actually booked a gig there, was going to. Oh, somebody said, well, it's 4 hours. And I said, well, that'll be $800. And they were, what? And I said, well, let me explain. I'm traveling to Jefferson from Tyler, which is, there's some gas involved, but there's 7 flights of stairs to get to the top. And I don't care who you are, that's just a lot.
Well, and DJ equipment at that time was heavy.
It's still heavy.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to think about the size of speakers, but I mean, even in addition to that, my rig was pretty small when I had it.
Yeah.
Yours, you had like a big coffin
Yeah.
and all these CDs to carry up and stuff. I mean, I had like 2 iPods and a little mixing deck.
And I used to think that it was because I had essentially a flat, if you could imagine a flatbed truck dolly, kind of like, so it was maybe 2.5 by 4. So I could strap stuff in there. If I was on flatland, golden.
Right.
But going upstairs, it was really rough.
Yeah.
Conversely, though, and I didn't get that gig. Conversely, though, in the city, there was, I believe it was a part of the Holiday Inn franchise. So they would do stuff in the courtyard. So you're on the street, you would take a right. You had probably your basic drive-in. Mm-hmm. You open the gate, you pull in, you close the gate, you open the gate, and that's where you are.
Wow, that's nice.
That was awesome. I literally would unload, set my tables up. Oh, I did that twice. It was the best. It took the sting off a lot as far as, doing, any of that. But how about you? I mean, did you have a gig that was either a learning experience or not? That you're like, oh gosh, this is difficult. This is the worst. And you just plant a smile on your face and take the check and say, thank you.
Yeah, I had a couple of those. I did a wedding at the Arbors, and I think this is the one that sort of like made me want to quit, and I stopped doing weddings. There's a lot of pressure on weddings, and I understand that and appreciate it and respect it, which is part of the reason I just didn't want the added pressure of them.
Sure.
A lot of those moments you just can't recreate. It's going to happen once, or at least once for that couple, right? So, I got really frustrated with the demands of like bridesmaids and the friends of the bride. One of the things that you taught me, Paula taught me, is when you're having that initial consult with your client, and your client is like the bride, right?
Yes.
You go through a list of songs they are absolute no's and absolute yeses. And then you kind of get a tone for what they want based on that, and have some conversations. And some of them are very specific. Some of them are like, I trust you, play what makes sense, right? This particular wedding, they were very conscious of the grandparents in the room, and there were certain rap and hip hop songs that they did not want played.
Oh, I know where this is going.
And I got badgered by the bridesmaids, and I think I was just too immature at the time. I mean, I was probably about 25, 26.
What did you say to them?
I was sort of snappy with them, and I was like, hey, I was told we're not playing it. And the young woman was like, well, I mean, we want to hear it or something, or like, but this is like the song, or I don't remember what her justification was, but she was adamant. And I basically came back with, if you have the bride come over here and tell me she wants it played, I'll play it for you, which put the bride in a bad situation, right? Like, I don't think that was a very professional move, but I was frustrated and not really, I wasn't there yet.
I had the exact same situation happen. Mm-hmm. It was a wedding, and conscious of the moms and dads and everything. And I said, oh, well, great. And they came over, and I said, well, and what I said is, look, I've been told not to, but if you can, talk to the bride, and if they want to work it out, blah, blah, blah. I never heard anything about it. And so at the end of the night, I would always ask my clients, are you okay with things? Can I use you as a reference? Yes. So somebody calls the next week for a gig, and I said, oh, by the way, you may want to use these people. Call these people for a reference. They were really happy. So I get a call back, and the guy says, look, I'm going to use you, but you need to know something. These guys did not want to use you again. And I got really, it's kind of like, okay, you got a problem. Tell Yeah, tell me to my face on that. But yeah, and then there was another gig. I was in Mount Pleasant. So there's that travel. It's like, you're looking at 5 hours. My wife came with me, and it was a wedding. There were kids. There were young kids. So I think it was a second marriage involved. Mm-hmm. And it's halfway through the reception, And the groom comes up and he says, "Hey, will you play this?" And I generally would have a rule that says I don't take unsolicited material because you never know you don't know if it's the worst type of Easter egg buried in there, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
like an F-bomb.
Exactly. So he says, "Will you play
Or
cut
worse.
2?" Yeah. So I cue it up and I'm listening, and it was like I think the words are like punk ass bitch motherfucker, something like that. I mean, it's something, I'm relating news
Checking
here.
the explicit box.
Yeah. And so I took it out, set it to the side, and the guy comes up, "Are you going to play the song, The Groom?" And I said, "No, I'm not going to play this." I said, "Look, and it wasn't just his young kids. It was like maybe 20 young kids in the room. There's parents, there's grandparents." And I looked at him, I said, "Besides, it's going to reflect on me, and you can play this anytime." Mm-hmm. And so I gave it back to him. He had his check bounced that night.
Oh.
Or it bounced when we deposited it. So what happened was we tried communicating, and Rosanna drove up to Mount Pleasant.
Oh.
And his parents owned a business. And,
God
and
bless
she
Rosanna.
And she said, "Look, here's how this runs. We can take care of this right now, or I can walk over to the district attorney's office and we'll file charges. Mm-hmm. And don't think I won't. I don't care that you're like you own a business in Mount Pleasant. I do not care."
Yeah.
And Rosanna did not.
The enforcer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. With a close quarters combat, my wife is a pro. But that was, one of those gigs. I think that was the only gig ever where, I hit some rubber money on there. Buy me a cup of coffee, Mandee.
Yeah.
I've seen that on other podcasts. That's literally...
Yeah, it's like a virtual tip jar. It's really that simple. So you go to the show notes, click Buy Me a Coffee, and then you have an opportunity to support the show in any way you like. Imagine yourself going to coffee with Chuck and myself and saying, "Hey, I like what you do on the show. I'm going to buy you a cup of coffee." Only all you have to do is click a link. It's that simple. I had a gig. I thought that happened to me on. This is an interesting story. This was probably one of my favorite gigs, and it's the one I was talking about a minute ago. Our friend Brandon Michael was booked, got a call, needed to have somebody else take this gig off of his hands.
Sure.
And he called me and he said, "Hey, are you available this night? It's an engagement party. The guy's going to propose. She doesn't know. It's just like a big family gathering thing. I forget. They were celebrating something else too. I can't remember what, but the boyfriend was going to propose to this girl. So it was going to be a fun party. It's out in the middle of nowhere at like some family's party barn.
Yeah.
Nice party barn though. I don't mean like...
you mean
it was tricked out.
There
was a bar.
You could live there, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a bar. There was a stage for me to set up on, all this stuff. And so went through the whole client needs, got music.
Got your notes together.
Got my notes together.
You're ready to go. Play some tunes.
Yeah. They mailed me back, back in the day when we actually mailed checks and paperwork and stuff. They mailed me back the deposit.
With stamps?
Yeah. They mailed me the deposit and all this. And so I just kind of filed it to the side. And then I went out and did this gig, and it was so much fun. The people were about my age, so my contemporaries.
Oh, yeah.
So much so, like...
Well, no, you had the vibe of the room.
I had the vibe of the room, and I was single at the time. And one of the fiance's friends kept asking me to dance with him.
And what did you say? I'm not in the job description. What did you say? Mandee, what did you say?
Yeah, I did. I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I can't really walk away from this right now. Like, you seem great. You're very nice. I'm flattered, and I'm working. So thank you.
Do you have a cell phone?
Yeah, I don't think we exchanged numbers that night. I mean, the client had my number, so if he really wanted it, but no, that didn't happen. But I was very flattered. It was fun. And at the end of the night, they paid me. And cash. Okay. And it was short. And I was livid.
How much short?
Kind of a lot. Like, I think they gave me like $500, and I was out there for, I don't know, I think the gig was supposed to be like $800 total because of the drive time. And then Brandon actually charged a little bit more than I normally did. And so he was like, the rate's $125 an hour. I was like, great, I'm making more than I usually do. And I was having so much fun. So I was just really surprised because I thought they really liked this. It was something along those lines. It was almost like about a 50% or 60% of what it was.
Whoa. So what happened?
I was really disappointed. And so I got home and I was like, man, I don't understand. Like, I thought we were having fun. I thought I did a good job. I went back and I looked at my paperwork. they didn't write me a check for the deposit. They wrote me a check for the full amount. That was a tip.
Oh.
They tipped me that much more. And I was like, holy cow. They did have fun. They did a good job. It was a fun night.
And, like you, I've always felt that weddings.
It's the first time I ever got tipped. I didn't know people did that.
I've tipped a few times, and I would always have a clause in my contract that would say if we went into overtime it was $100 an hour. And so people would, and I would always go to them like 15 minutes before. I said, okay, it's 1:45. I just want to tell you we're in wrap-up mode. And they go, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But sometimes it would be, well, can you stay and,
The party's rocking, man. Let's keep it going.
I loved most of the weddings, if you do your intel correctly, they're flawless. There was one time, though, a couple times that I had encounters with like wedding consultants. There was one, and I was doing it over at the Women's Building in Tyler. So they gave me the information. I said, wait a minute, this isn't matching up. Just say it. So I said, blah, 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 let's welcome Mr. and Mrs. John Smith. And people turned around and go, the names aren't right. And I sat with I talked to the bride and groom afterwards and said, look, your consultant gave me the wrong information. But most of the time, I love weddings. I mean, and the thought is, in my mind, is people are happy. Mm-hmm. They're prepared to be happy. They're
typically prepared to pay, too.
Sure. And I'm sure that when you've talked to brides and grooms, I would say, okay, here's how it's going to go. Really, really, really soft music to get everybody seated. This is if you're doing a ceremony. Okay, anything during the ceremony, as we get out, for eating music, kind of mid-tempo stuff, blah, 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 blah. As we get, and I would try to encourage, all of your specialty stuff, we're tossing the bouquet, we're doing the garter, we're doing the first dance. Let's kind of get that together so you can get all those picture ops together. And then the first set or two, we're going to lean just a little bit older, like Chuck Berry and the Twist and stuff like that. I said, I want to get moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas out there. We get those photo ops done, and then we can kind of cut loose and feel our way around it.
Yeah.
Because I said, usually what I'll do is I'll do that, and then I'd say, okay, then I'll formally introduce myself. We open the floor to requests, and you go on. So I always really liked weddings. They were fun. But like you said, there's always the pressure to get it right.
Yeah.
And that one time that happened, I just was like, because, I'm sitting in the women's building and people are turning around staring at me. I'm like, oh my God. I was so angry. I was so upset. And I think I didn't encounter this wedding consultant for the rest of the night either, the rest of the afternoon.
I bet not.
Oh, brother. But yeah. Because you had a unique system too. Twin iPods. How did that work?
Yeah. So I got started you and I started working together in 2005. And I think it was about a year later, my mom helped me get started as far as cash flow. She helped kind of front the money for my laptop. I had a set of Mackie speakers. I had I forget what it was called. I think it was called iDJ, but it was a small board. It was probably about the size of a laptop, but thicker. And you could lock two iPods into it. Okay. And then it had a fader switch between the two, and it had volume slides as well.
So did you have the same library, I guess, on both of them, correct?
I had the same library on both iPods, and then there was also a line-in port for my laptop.
How did you coordinate it, like software-wise?
So I used iTunes. I had a whole Mac setup, and I would create the playlist on iTunes and just kind of move it back and forth. Occasionally, I think I pulled up something like in a QuickTime player if I had to on the fly. But yeah, and this was, before Wi-Fi was readily available, right? I mean, it was starting to become a thing, but it wasn't like, and you couldn't hotspot your phone either. So if I didn't have a song, I was sort of like, well, I don't have it.
You had to plan well before.
I had to plan well beforehand. Yeah.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I had to use that or like.
But later I used Spotify. Later when I could, input my actual cell phone.
Okay. And then would you play off Spotify?
I played some off of iTunes and some off of Spotify because then I could like pull something that was current if I didn't have it. So then my library didn't have to be as vast.
Yes.
I didn't have to stay on top of it as much because I was familiar with like top 40 country and pop enough that I knew kind of where the explicit bombs were.
Sure.
And I could avoid them if necessary.
Well, when you mean avoid, what did you like do actual edits on things?
No, I just wouldn't play it.
Okay.
Or I would look for a radio edit version because iTunes used to have that. They would have the different singles available, and some of them would say radio edit, and I would just use that.
TM Century, there was a while when I was over at KNUE back in the 90s where I was able to get access to a lot of TM stuff because of Mix 107.
Yeah.
So I would get all their disc cards, and I would sit there and go through and make my own CDs. And if I needed, because sometimes even the radio edit was like, I need
You might
to
have
do
a bitch drop.
Yeah, or.
I mean, there was the whole song by Meredith Brooks, right?
Yeah, or sometimes you'd clip it or backmask it,
Yeah.
and that too. But I had something. My first rig, you were talking about the coffin. It was huge. And I had 2 slots where you could literally put.
You had racks, didn't you?
I had 2 racks you could put. They're padded slots. You could put store grade CD players in them, and then I had a mixer board on top. My amp was in there. I mean, it was heavy, but it was solid.
Yeah.
And then I had my second rig that it was a lot smaller, and I eventually gave that up. And then my third rig, which I still have because in my mind I go, well,
you never know.
May need to get the gig going again. I don't know. But the software that I have on there is Virtual DJ, which is on, and also there's one called mixx.com. Both of those are really good freeware. But Virtual DJ has this thing which I really love called Auto Mix.
Oh.
It's like a side playlist which you can drag and drop things over. And what happens is you can punch a button and it'll queue up to one of your decks. And then it just starts playing. It'll do the segues. It's pretty cool when you have to have your own. That's right, coffee drop. We've heard it and developed the phrase here, coffee drop.
iTunes back in the day, I think it's like actually evolved into more like Apple Music now. I think is what kind of the term is. But they had a segue ability for like automation, so you could just hit play and let things run on my computer. I could just let them run back to back, and you could actually adjust the segue. From like half a second to 2 or 4 seconds. And so it would automatically crossfade it for you, which works well for some songs and doesn't for others.
Yeah.
So I kind of played with that a little bit during my gigs. I sort of knew if I had a long fade or a cold ending or I could manipulate it in that way ahead of time because I knew the music. And I think it's interesting because a lot of people think they can do what we do. And not that I do it a lot anymore. I really don't. But I've had friends tell me, oh, I could do what you do. I could mobile DJ. But they don't realize the art of it. And when you see somebody that's really good at it, I mean, like a club DJ. Yeah. I had the opportunity many, many, many years ago to be up in the DJ booth at a hot club in Houston with a guy that DJs in New York.
How was that?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
This guy, I'm trying to remember what his name was.
Did he have the turntable and the vinyl, or what did he have?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what software program he used, but it's like a digital turntable. It wasn't actual vinyls, but you can like scratch and
I wonder if it was
manipulate.
like Tractor or something like that.
It wasn't called that. I would have remembered that name.
Yeah.
Oh man, Luscious Ice has it. He would know what it is.
Ice.
Yeah. Our buddy Ice.
I've seen those things.
We need to have Ice. Come on, man. I've never had
just to do something on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to have Ice talk about mobile DJ gigs with us sometime because he's got a ton of experience, but it was really neat. And to watch somebody like at the top of their game. I mean, if they're DJing clubs in Houston and New York and LA, and guy was, I mean, it was fascinating. I was like, I want to do what you do, but I don't have the skill set. Like it's an art. It was like watching an artist paint a masterpiece, watching this guy, because he was moving through songs. He wasn't playing entire songs, right? Yeah. And he could get the beats lined up to a point where he could go from like playing Paper Planes by MIA into another like hip hop pop song, and it just blended perfectly. Yeah. And I was like, dude,
yeah, I don't have it because you have to
gifted.
You have to have A, the gift, B, the split second timing just to let that go. I don't have. I mean, I can put together. I can splice stuff, but I don't definitely have that. I'm just I'll play. You
play the whole song.
Let's play. Yeah, let's play Macarena and make sure that the bridesmaids dance and everybody's happy, and we go home and collect our $800 or whatever we're collecting for the gig. I'm fine with that.
Did you ever do freebies? Did you ever for nonprofits? I'm curious.
No, I don't.
That was the death of Mandee Montana's DJ service.
I did. I remember when you were doing it. I thought. I didn't do that, but I never had those many opportunities either, to be honest with you. It didn't come up much. I did do this, though. There were a few times I had frequent clients, so they'd get cut rates. I had a couple of years where Overton High School would use me after their football games. So I gave them a blanket rate, and I would say, okay, because we always figured the start time would be around 10:15, 10:30 to midnight. Maybe, I think 12:30 was the cutoff. And I said, look, travel, and I had lights at the time, all the setup, $250 a gig, and that's it. That's how we'll do it. And I forgot the name of their principal's name. He was this tall, bald man, probably 65 years old, glasses, and he had like the glass band on his head, and he would go around with flashlights and shine it at the kids. It was hilarious.
Those are fun.
It was wonderful. And, the kids liked it a lot because I would have like the one request a night to play like System of the Down, to where like the two 16-year-olds with long hair would go out there and, bob their heads, and then, okay, let's get back to regular programming that, the kids really want. And,
right.
But that was the education for me too, as far as kids dances. Early in my mobile DJ career, I tried to just go old school. That lasted once. I had to.
What year did you start doing? I mean, roughly
97.
97.
I had to invest time. I had to sit there and invest time in editing, in finding music and editing, listening to it, and actually developing an opinion on where this is going to go.
Yeah.
Because eventually, especially kids dances, one of the pitches that I would have, and it wasn't a big deal at weddings, but most of the time I would say, look, if you need a pre-approved playlist, I will be happy to furnish that.
Yeah. Well, you DJ'd my prom in
Yes.
spring of 2001.
Yes.
I was prom committee president, and we booked Chuck McKinley's DJ service, and he was fabulous.
Yeah.
Fantasy Island was the theme, and lo and behold, it became that because the air conditioner went out that night. So all the boys took off their jackets and their shirts and ran around in their little tux vests, and it was a hot night.
It was tropical.
It was tropical for sure.
It was tropical.
At the Knights of Columbus Hall in Longview, Texas.
But what was the great thing about it? Me, the DJ, still got paid.
Oh man, you did a great job. It was so much fun. We had a blast that night.
Well, and it's because in one of those situations too, with especially something like that, it's like a subdivision of kids' parties, because you still have it to where, you want the kids to have a fun time, right? You want the kids to have a fun time, but what you want to make sure is that when you're done, the adults go, we'd recommend you. And they're different. I mean, I've had it to where, it's a pre-approved playlist. Moms and dads are uptight. I've had some where, if kids were dirty dancing, it was a crazy thing. We'd have to make announcements and stuff. I've had dances where nobody cared. It wasn't like the parents didn't care. They wanted the kids to have fun. And you know what? If they're going to be dirty dancing a little bit, okay, at least we're here to watch them. You know what I mean?
That didn't come out right.
Did it come out? I thought it came out right.
We're here to watch them dirty dance.
Well, okay. Maybe it sounded a little too voyeuristic. It would be, okay, we're here to watch them dirty dance. See, now that sounded bad in my ears.
Yeah. No, I'll wrap sort of with this, that we're at 27 minutes, but I mentioned kind of the freebie gigs.
And I had a coffee drop too.
Yeah, I was a few minutes in. I was a few years into this, and I wasn't doing enough gigs that it was super profitable for me. I'd paid my gear off to my mom. Like, I paid her back pretty quick. But I wasn't doing enough regularly that I was like, it was steady income.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of opportunities presented to me to donate my services for a nonprofit, with the thought of it being kind of like a showcase, because the people that were attending the event have weddings and parties and stuff that they would potentially book me for.
How'd that work?
It was fine. I had a great time. It's actually how I met Aaron.
Oh, so yes.
Yeah. The first gig that I donated.
As far as a long-term investment,
it paid off. It paid off really well. I met my husband doing it. He was bartending and I was DJing at Black Tie Bingo in 2010. It was a fundraiser for Heart of Tyler. And that night it was a blast, and we didn't end up dating immediately. It kind of was a little bit of a slow burn, but we reconnected about a year later and started dating, and then eventually got married. But through that, I started the networking that I did at that event led to not only that, but lots of friendships that were established.
Sure.
I did some additional freebie gigs, and while I will say it kind of ended my DJ career, what it did do was it allowed me to build some great relationships and networking that have led to all kinds of other opportunities that have been profitable for me over, the last decade.
Okay, so, you have that, you meet your husband.
Yeah.
He's the bartender. So this is the big question.
Uh-oh.
Did you get free drinks?
Well, yeah. But not because he was the bartender, because everybody at the event got free drinks. It was part of the ticket in. But yes, he did keep bringing me beers so that he could talk to me throughout the night. Yes, he did.
This has been another episode of The Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley.
This is our show to explore radio,
podcasting,
gear,
and the gearheads that use the gear,
and making money with a hot mic,
and other stuff in between.
We'd love for you to follow us on social media as well. Follow us on Facebook at The Unknown Morning Show and Instagram at The Unknown Morning Show. See us on YouTube at The Unknown Morning Show.
Thank you for listening to The Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
I'm Chuck McKinley. And remember, be kind and rewind.